Hey everybody, welcome to Neil Talks. My name's Neil, and it's time to talk QI. And today, our viewer request takes us to, frankly, an episode that I'm surprised I haven't seen yet, because this is Sandi Toksvig's very first episode. It's the first episode of Series N. Stephen Fry gave us 13 wonderful series of the show, and Sandi took over for the second half of the alphabet. And this is her very first episode. And while she was a seasoned guest on the show, hosting is obviously a very different animal. And whether this episode is particularly funny or not is almost secondary, because I'm so curious about how well she did and what the energy was like with a new host of a long-standing show. So yeah, I'm just super curious about this one more than anything. You know, I feel like just recently I checked out the unaired pilot, Stephen hosting the show for the very, very first time. And, well, he's obviously a very accomplished actor, and I'm sure he had done all sorts of presenting up to that point. You could see that his style had evolved since that first appearance. So I'm curious to see how Sandi is at the very beginning of her run. I'm not sure who the guests are, so let's just jump right into it, guys. This is episode 1 of Series N, and it's called Naming Names.
Well, this week the name of the game is naming names. There's an old Chinese proverb that says the beginning of wisdom is to call things by their right name. A household name, Romesh Ranganathan.
Nice. We like Romesh.
Hey, Rose by any other name, Cariad Lloyd.
And we like Cariad.
A name to conjure with, Phill Jupitus.
And we like Phill.
An old what's-his-name, Davies.
And there's Alan.
Their buzzers are their porn names, okay? So that's...
Oh.
If you've not played that game, it's the first pet's name and mother's maiden name. So Phill goes...
See, in North America, we play first pet and the street you grew up on.
Schroeder Swan.
Schroeder Swan?
How much you paid that bloke? I'd have done that for nothing. And more convincingly,
Well,
Schroeder was a spiteful pub dog.
Right.
Used to attack Jock, our barman.
You have your own barman.
I'd be Christy Springfield. No, sorry. Christy Springthorn.
Snuffy story.
You can now access my bank account.
That's a very, very specific kind of porn, right there.
Goldie Silverace.
Hey up, it's Nobby Styles.
Bobby Styles. Kind of works.
Nobby Styles is a very good porn name.
Now, here is my first very simple question. Who is offended by what?
Oh, God, everybody by
By
everything.
what?
Yes,
The
well, there
word?
is that.
Anybody who reads a tweet and doesn't understand it immediately is offended by it.
Yeah.
A lot of you are saying I'm offended by the IT crowd.
The problem with Twitter is that even if you choose something like that you think is really innocent
Yeah,
and can't be
right.
offensive, it can be. You know,
Yeah.
you tweet about porridge and then somebody goes, well, actually, I had a
think you're
porridge-related incident. I can't believe you'd even not bother to consider the feelings of people that had ready break-related incidents in their childhood.
At Three Bears, is that a sort of...
Yeah.
It's more to do with who?
Who is
Yes.
offended by what?
Yes.
Oh, the World
Doctor,
Health
offended by
Organization.
Daleks.
Doctor is the right area.
World
Oh,
Health.
World Health
The World
Organization.
Health Organization, absolutely right.
And they're offended by what? Which is the World Health Annual
Trust.
Transportation Convention.
Scientists are naming diseases that offend people, and that indeed we've done this too much in the past. Spanish flu would be a good example. It affects people in Spain, possibly, and tourism. Legionnaire's disease is not a legionnaire in the world not been distressed by the thought.
They're so easily offended, too.
Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which I imagine... I don't know who that would offend. People call Creutzfeldt. Jakob Creutzfeldt, I would imagine. Very...
Jacob's really pissed
swine
about
flu,
that.
apparently. Very offensive to people who work with, I don't know, pigs.
Pigs.
Mrs. Swine.
I'm very keen on paralytic shellfish, which I can only imagine
lovely
would
thought.
offend prawns that drink too much. Right? Apparently,
Staggering home sideways, crabs, hey, paralytic. I'll be honest, I don't see how you get crabs if you're staggering sideways, but...
the kind of idea is you're supposed to minimise unnecessary distress. So, for example, if you call something sudden death syndrome, that's just too frightening.
Hold on a sec. If you're about to die
Yeah.
imminently,
Yeah.
you can't just say something cuddly so they're not offended. Do you know what I mean? To be
No, but
upset.
here's the thing. So doctors have certain acronyms, and I love these. There's SBI, which is something bad inside, and it means the doctor knows there's something wrong, not entirely sure what it is. SVBI, something very bad inside. Again, don't know what it is, but it'll definitely kill you. And there's loads for fat people. There's CBT, which is chronic biscuit toxicity. The other best one for fat people is BW. Beached whale. Oh. And my favourite acronym, PRATFO. Patient reassured and told to F off. There's all loads of occupational diseases, certain diseases that were entirely...
Minus cough.
Jogger's nipple.
Jogger's nipple.
Tennis
yes.
elbow.
And the very first one ever was chimney sweep's scrotum.
Or scrotum.
Yeah.
Bagpiper's fungus.
Bagpiper's fungus is a terrible thing. It's apparently if you don't clean the bagpipes, you can get a sort of a...
I've seen all these things listed outside a flat in Amsterdam. Oh, Mary Poppins, my scrotum's playing me up something right.
Some of them make sense, like Fiddler's Neck. I get that. My neck cracks just thinking about it. Work aversion syndrome just sounds like common, normal.
Can you tell me what this bird's name is?
Philip, Jeremy,
Maybe. Well, to assist you, you have
Steve.
some bird whistles
Oh.
beside you.
Is it a...
See if you can come up with the actual name.
Oh,
That's not bad.
Is it a whippoorwill? Chickadee? It's not a chickadee.
You've got lots of...
I'm thinking of birds that have onomatopoeic names.
What are you doing?
Is it a tit?
It's my ears pop.
It's called a superb fairy wren. Isn't that the sweetest thing? And every single nest has a family name, so it's like it has a surname. And she starts singing a unique tune, so it might be better than that.
Sandy's regretting taking the post already.
So she sings the same tune every 4 minutes, over and over for a week.
My daughter
Balmy.
does that with Let It Go.
Oh, sorry, oh, I hate that song. They actually hear it and they commit it to memory, and Mum and Dad and Eggs, they all know the tune. It's a unique tune.
Waterloo.
I don't think there are lyrics. And they have to sing it back to her, and that way she can be absolutely sure there isn't a cuckoo in the nest.
That is amazing.
That really is
but,
amazing.
But if they
It's
were
a shibboleth.
people,
Yeah.
how annoying would they be to have
Yeah.
around the dinner?
I knew a family that did that. They had a whistle.
Right.
And in the supermarket, the mum would do a certain whistle, and then the kid would whistle back.
No, darling, that's the Von Trapps. That's a film.
My mum would summon me home by whistling.
Seriously? Wow.
That is a
No, now I could hear that 3 miles away.
One time, do you remember we were in Manchester and the taxi went by and I went, Daddy! Like that, and he ignored me and it went about 50 yards and he did that and it braked.
And was the taxi driver your mum?
She's a Manchester cabbie.
Horses also do this. They have a signature whinny.
I'm so allergic to horses that I just sneezed at the sight of that picture.
I don't think it's an allergy. That photo is terrifying.
Say, for example, that you have a horse called, shall we call it Alan, in a stall, and another horse called Sugar walks by and goes out of sight behind a barrier. Alan notices that and goes, carries on, you're being Alan the horse, goes back to eating. If they play the identifying whinny of a different horse, Alan gets really freaked out because he knows that the horse he saw walk past wasn't the one that he's just heard.
Oh.
This is on a list of things scientists can be asked to do. And dolphins as well. Flipper's here. There's 2 children down a mine shaft.
A dolphin taxi is going to come through now.
Oh, dolphins.
I know.
Are they nice, really?
Well, I once swam with wild dolphins. I've never been more terrified in my life, frankly. Who Who sold seashells on the seashore?
She did.
Is it somebody who's got no idea about the laws of sort of supply and demand?
There were plenty of seashells and lots of people who wanted to buy them. So who...
The answer is she, isn't it?
Well, it is in the rhyme. Can you do the rhyme? Do you know the rhyme?
She's... No, I can't, because I've got a lisp.
Or if she sells seashells on the seashore, then I'm sure she sells seashore shells. Is the full rhyme. Did anybody... Thank you very much. So, yes.
Typical
Because
British reaction to a tongue twister. And it is... That's what we think of articulate people.
How fancy.
Was she a Cockney woman who some white Victorian man made up a nice rhyme about, but actually she was probably a prostitute, died of syphilis?
That turned Dickens, right?
I wonder why they didn't include that bit in the rhyme.
Is she like a cocklemonger?
No, it's the Dorset lady. Bless you. The Dorset. We're a caring, sharing show. Lady
Killer! Look at the
There
weapon!
she is.
found the first dinosaur in the UK, didn't she? The first whole.
She was the inspiration for the tongue twister. She's a Victorian fossil hunter called Mary Anning.
All over the Natural History Museum.
Yeah. She was very brave because actually it's very dangerous. That is a picture of her with her dog Trey.
She's about to kill it and put it in that bag.
I don't know if the picture shows the dog already dead. It died in the landslide and she was very fond of it.
A landslide caused by.
Well, it is, I don't know if you...
Well.
Her findings absolutely made important changes in scientific thinking, but she, in fact, discovered the very first ichthyosaur skeleton, correctly identified, the first two plesiosaur skeletons, and the first pterosaur skeleton. She found these, and she's the very first person who worked out what they are. So I'm going to... do you know what that is?
Oh,
£9.50 in a Cornwall gift shop.
Is this dinosaur shit?
It is. It is absolutely
copper,
that. People first...
Copperlight.
Now I feel weird.
These have been tumbled to prove you can, in fact, polish a turd, but, All right. She discovered fish scales and teeth, and she's the person who realised that, in fact, coprolites, which is the correct term for them, is, in fact, dinosaur poo. Is that extraordinary, to have a dinosaur's bit of poo in your hand? I think it's incredible. Well, here's the thing, that's how she made a living, because she was very poor.
She did start finding them when she was 12 or 13, didn't she?
Yeah, she could sell them to tourists. She really sort of pains me slightly, because she sold things to men who then wrote scientific articles about them, and she didn't get the credit. She wasn't allowed to join, for example, the Geological Society of London. They didn't admit women until 1904. She didn't get full credit until 163 years after her death. Here are some new names for things, but can you tell me what any of them are?
Adorkable.
Adorkable, do you know what it is?
Is that when somebody's like really into comic books, but it's quite cute?
Socially inept, but charming with it. They're what's known as neologisms, so they are new terms that have entered the language.
Goblin mode.
Al Desco is having your lunch.
That's our
Your lunch at your
word of
desk.
2022.
A belfie. I can't
According
remember what
to
a
the-
belfie is. It's something.
Belfie is where you take a selfie, but you have a
Oxford
bell.
English Dictionary.
What part of you is a belfie?
Oh, my God.
Yes.
A butt selfie?
End.
It's
I thought that was a dick pic.
it's your bottom.
Bottom?
Yes, it's a picture
That's
of
a
your...
bumpy.
Well,
It's like the OED has been taken over by a 14-year-old boy who's bored.
honk and bonkers, it just means amazing.
Curiositarian. Just people wanting to eat new
These words,
things.
If I hear someone using them, I can beat them to death with the OED, which is quite a hefty book.
It's a weighty tome.
Does anybody know where the word quiz comes from? Because we're doing a kind of quiz.
I feel like I do know, but I can't remember.
Do we get a point for that?
When you say it, I'm going to go...
Okay. We don't really know.
When they say the police are quizzing the suspect, that's wrong, isn't it?
No, that's from inquisitive, and inquisition. So that's a
Good,
separate...
you've got it. You're in the right chair. A little cold feeling there.
Smackdown.
This little thing you had roast beef, this little thing you had naan, and what did the last one do?
Little piggy went.
Cried wee 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 all the way home.
All the way home. Unbelievably irritating. So, you're going to play with Alan's feet. Go to play with your feet, Danny?
Yes.
I don't really like feet. Can I just say this? I consider them the frayed edges of the body.
Just trim them off.
So here's what we're going to do.
We've never had an audience that's so judgmental. What do you hear? Someone else will get their foot out.
stick. Romesh is going to gently touch one of your toes and you tell us which one. Yeah.
4.
Yeah, then keep going.
3.
Amazingly, you've entirely proved the point that I was trying to make, which is very nice. So you said it was number 3, and in fact it was number 2.
It sort of defeats the
Do
object.
it yourself. Yeah, to go and redo it yourself.
I went right through with it, and I did one of the toes myself, and then thought, well, no, that's number 1, and of course...
Have you ever been involved in scientific research?
I let myself down, Sandy, all the time. I'm just unbelievable idiot.
I think you're lovely. We particularly struggle, as you did, between the second and the third toes. And also, even more strangely, lots of people find it difficult to keep track of their toes entirely. Nearly half the testers reported feeling as if one toe was gone. Which of us is the most common?
It's either me or Alan.
Why? It must be rubbish.
No, in fact, the most common...
You've got to give an argument. It must be rubbish. I see.
I had a look to see whose name was the most common.
Oh.
So whose name do we know?
Davies is a very common name.
I'm afraid it is you, Alan. Ranganathan is used, according to a website called Namespedia, is used 1,789 times in at least 26 countries. So what does it mean, the name? Do you know what the name means?
I think it means, like, love God.
I broke it down. Ranga means source of amusement for others.
Right.
And Nathan means he will give.
Oh, right.
Phil, search your name. Honestly, you come up... There's nothing, you Lithuanian bastard.
Because it was an accidental name, because it's actually Jupitus.
It got bastardized, okay.
No. They go, Jupitus. And he went, Jupitus. I have lovely hair. I don't know who's upset Alan.
Did you know there was an entire group of Indo-Iranian people in the Caucasus Mountains who were called the Alans?
I did not know that.
They've died out. My own name, I looked up on this thing, Toksvig, and it said that it is used at least 23 times in 3 countries, and then it listed all the people. All of them are relatives of mine, and I'm not on the list. Having a huge name can help with your uniqueness. Have a look at these. Here's some of the longest names in history. Look at that name. That's great, isn't it? That's a fantastic name. Queen of Bali, circa 1088 to 11...
Do you think she fell asleep and just clapped on the keyboard?
There's a 2-year-old on an iPhone.
Would you rather be in a non-routine operation or a mass deposition event?
Looks like Alan's in The Simpsons from here.
What was the first one? A mass deposition event?
I prefer a non-routine operation.
Do you?
Well, if it's routine, the person's more likely to be a bit blasé about it. You know, if you've done it loads of times. Where if it's non-routine, I probably should stay awake while I'm doing this. You know,
I can tell you that the non-routine operation is a phrase used by Trans-Florida Airlines.
OK.
Crash landing?
It is. It is their word for a plane crash.
I mean, you'd hope they'd call that non-routine, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
What a damning indictment of the airline if they don't, yeah.
I'm going to show you my favourite airport sign, because you know you never get proper information. There we go.
For some reasons.
Honest,
It's absolutely fine. And the other thing is,
Multi-purpose.
a mass deposition event is, in fact, a huge pile of poo. It's a euphemistic term given by archaeologists to the discovery of a thick layer of horse dung, and it's believed to be associated with Hannibal's crossing of the Alps into Italy in 218 BC. Here's a quote from one of the team. "There's even the possibility of finding an elephant tapeworm egg. This would really be the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow."
Elephant tapeworm egg.
While we're on euphemisms, what is a non-discernible microbinoculator?
Something you can't see.
It's very small, very small.
It's like a
It's
parasite.
non-discernible, you can't see it.
Microbinoculator.
Bullet.
You're absolutely in the right area. It's a poison dart gun. Devised by the CIA in 1975.
I'm on fire. I'm bound
You're-
to win.
you're doing-
I've only had one klaxon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say this during the show to flag it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they were just going to be minus 40 and tell me to piss off. He's got the sight on
But
back
it's,
to front.
the thing I don't understand...
Yes.
He does.
Back to front, you idiot.
He's 20 miles away. The dart will never get him.
Why wouldn't you want to get caught in bed with a Norfolk Howard?
Oh, well, some sort of a bug or a flea or a
yes,
tick
you
or
are
a
on
bee.
fire. Yes.
What's going on with you today? Like, suddenly you know shit.
That's a substandard panel this week.
Substandard panel.
10th and 20th century, there's a guy, he's either called Bugsy or Joshua Bug. Anyway, he really hated being called Bug, and so he changed his name to Norfolk Howard, and his friends, to take the mickey, referred to all bedbugs as Norfolk Howards, and in the end, bedbugs became known as Norfolk Howard.
Oh, that's horrible.
Name the place where all the Vikings who died in battle went.
Not Valhalla, I guess.
I'll take the hit. Valhalla.
Yeah.
Only half of the Viking heroes actually go to Valhalla. So in Viking mythology, there are actually two sets of gods, and both sets get to choose their dead. So half go to Valhalla, which is where they all want to go, basically, and the other half go to the goddess Freya's field of Folkvanger, which was probably, a blow, I would
have
imagine.
never been more aroused on a TV show. Do the voice. Do the voice.
Folkvanger.
Folkvanger.
Folkvanger. See, I think you'd like to go there, Phil.
Yes, I would like to go to...
Because there are women there.
There's no women in Valhalla.
No, just the Valkyries riding in and out. So if you didn't die in battle, you died a natural death, where did you go?
To Loki's Kingdom of Mischief.
It's a place we don't want to go today when we die. We don't want to go.
Hell.
We don't want to go to hell.
H-E-L, hell.
If they died of natural causes. I feel terrible. Quick, start a fight.
Name a self-confessed Nazi.
All those guys.
Well, they didn't call themselves Nazis, did
Absolutely
they?
right. You are just doing it brilliantly. Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely right.
You're ruining the show, Alan.
All this time you've been intimidated.
No.
To say that.
The leash is off.
I'll throw him off his game.
Although I like that Churchill called them Nazis.
Nazis,
Nazis.
yeah.
And he refers to the
Nazis?
Gestapo as the Gestapo.
What?
Name the cause of the first mass extinction.
The first
now
one.
this is a trick one, because you're trying to get us to do the dinosaur one, but there was one before that,
There
wasn't
were 3 or 4
14
before
years,
that.
he understands the format.
What I still can't do is think in my head.
Is it ice?
It is not ice.
Baby.
No.
I mean, it could have been a meteor impact too, but
It's sea anemone greed and really the invention of the mouth.
the invention of the mouth.
And Ediacarans are the very first complex life forms on Earth. They didn't have a mouth, they didn't have an anus, they just lived through osmosis.
They got along fine.
They're just fine. And then what happens is the Cambrian explosion, so that's give or take a Tuesday, about 542 million years ago. There's more oxygen around, and you get sea anemone-like creatures. They have a mouth, and do you know what they did?
They ate all the
They're
eukaryotes.
absolutely right. They ate the lot of them.
And the terrible, tragic thing was that they couldn't tell each other what was happening.
Oh,
No.
don't. That's so sad.
No mouth.
Look out!
I've had
other.
boyfriends like that, and I understand how they feel. Nothing you can do. Just let them get on with it.
It's been a learning experience being with you, Karen. What's French for nom de plume?
Oh, hang on a minute.
What?
Is that they don't have that doesn't mean pseudonym in French.
The French, when an author chooses to write under a different name, is nom de guerre. The British didn't like nom de guerre, and so they changed it to nom de plume, and now the French have used it. They've taken it from us.
That's unusual that they would take it.
Foe had loads and loads, in fact, including Daniel Defoe. His real name was Daniel Foe.
He lived in Stoke Newington.
Who did? Daniel Defoe. That is where somebody like that ought to live. There's a wonderful story about a book written by a man called T. Lobsang Rampa. He was supposedly a Tibetan monk, and it was a huge hit, this book. It was called The Third Eye. In fact, it was written by a plumber from Plimpton. His name was Cyril Henry Hoskin.
A total hoax.
So he claimed that the soul of the original Lopsang Rampa had inhabited his body after he fell out of a fir tree in his garden in Thames Ditton while attempting to photograph an owl. In fourth place, with a magnificent -2, it is Phil.
He took the hit for Valhalla. He fell on that
Place
sword.
with 4 points, it's Romesh.
It's a very high-scoring episode. Fourth is -2.
With 5 points, it's Cariad.
Alan wins. Okay. I can appreciate that. They hardly acknowledged that this was Sandy's first episode at all. They just got on with it like a regular episode. Bob's your uncle. Here we go. It's QI, just like you've always had. There were a couple of comments scattered throughout, but really not a lot of reference to it. Phil commented that she's in the right chair when Sandy sort of took the piss out of Alan once. You know, we referred to Alan's finally not being intimidated. But for the most part, we just let Sandy get on with it, and she was fine. Like, if you hadn't told me, if I didn't know that this was her first episode, those comments would have clued me in that she had recently taken over, but I wouldn't have known, oh, this is the first episode of hers necessarily. So why shine a light on it, I guess, is the point. I'm sure it was being talked about. It's a popular show. Stephen Fry's a very well-known individual, and I mean, so is Sandy, but, you know, it's a significant transition that I'm sure some people in the entertainment press were talking about, and fans of the show, no doubt. But it's a really strong outing. It's a strong episode. It's great having a stalwart guest as part of the panel, and Phill. I don't know what the standings were like back during Series 14, but I know until very recently, Phill was the guest with the most number of appearances. I mean, heck, when he refers to the show, he says, we are, what did he say? He said something along the lines of, we're something, a something panel, or we're a something show. We're a very, that's right, he was talking to the audience, and he said, we're a very considerate show, when he bless you'd somebody in the audience. But he talks about the show as his, like, not that it's a guest, he's a guest. And then I know his daughter's one of the elves. I don't know how long she's been one of the elves, but I wouldn't be surprised if she was one at this stage in the proceedings. He clearly has an affection and fondness for the show, so I dig that. It almost feels necessary to have, like, Phill or Bill Bailey in that welcome to the show episode for Sandy. Who else would be on that par? I need to see the leaderboard of who else makes a ton of appearances. I feel like Rob Brydon and Sean Locke made a ton of appearances over the years. You have to think about people who've been around, who've had long careers, not just people who've made a bunch of appearances in recent seasons. Like, I'm sure Susan Calman has done a bunch of recent appearances. Giles Brandreth has probably done a bunch of episodes. He'd be an interesting first episode for Sandy. I feel like she would have to learn how to manage a guest like Giles. But yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. I really dug that. And just a really fun episode. Honestly, it's rather remarkable how seamless the transition is. Obviously, Stephen and Sandy have different personalities. They bring their own styles to the game, but they are both very intelligent presenters. And they just exude this control over the proceedings that's reassuring, it's friendly, it's humorous. It just works. And I don't feel like any of that was lost. I mean, I'm sure there are people who much preferred Stephen to Sandy, and there are people who much prefer Sandy to Stephen, but I think the vast majority of fans of the show are very happy with both. So that's a luxurious position to be in, and I applaud the producers of the show for finding the right replacement, because it could have been very mishandled. And, you know, it doesn't hurt to have the continuity of Alan Davis either. When you essentially have not two hosts, but you certainly have two regulars, and Alan he's more than just a panelist. He does a lot to keep the energy flowing. He takes the hits when people don't want to buzz in and get that obvious klaxon. I mean, he's the real team player, and it would have been a different animal if they had to replace both Stephen and Alan at the same time. But it feels like Alan's hanging on for the duration. I know we've talked about this, and it's worth discussing again since Series T has recently started up, at least when I'm presenting this. It might already be over by the time this hits my YouTube. But we're 20 series in at this point, only 6 to go. And Stephen did the first 13, and if Sandi did the second 13 and then called it quits, I don't think anyone would begrudge her that. So then the question is do you just retire the show? Any show would be happy with a 26 series run. Or do you keep it going for the passionate and long-standing fan base that would really hate to see QI disappear from their weekly routine? So, I don't know. Then it becomes a question of what do the producers want to do? Who could you find to take over the show if Sandi left after Series Z, for instance? Would Alan want to stick around for another pass through the alphabet? Or, in a weird way, I think losing Alan would be perhaps even the harder seat to fill. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. To replace the host, you need a good presenter, you need somebody who's very intelligent and funny. In the UK comedy scene, there are a ton of people like that. Let David Mitchell take over, or who knows? I mean, I'm sure there's a ton of young up-and-coming comedians who would be equally at home in the seat. But finding someone like Alan, who is quite knowledgeable, but in a, quote, everyman way, but willing to look foolish every performance, that takes a special kind of personality. So, yeah, I think Alan might be the tougher seat to replace. Anyway, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. I mean, and all of this, of course, is assuming we get to Series Z. There's no guarantee Sandi wants to stick around for another 6 years. There's no guarantee that Alan does. There's no guarantee that the producers of the show want to keep making this series, that it's profitable and supported by the network. So let's just be grateful for every season that keeps coming down the pipeline. As always, let me know what episodes you'd love to see me react to. I'm working my way through my list, and I will eventually get to yours if you recommend it. And until next time, everybody, take care, stay healthy. We'll see you soon. Cheers.